Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for bouncing in to our webinar. I'm going to share my screen. And here we go. Okay. Is it working, Aaron?
Yep.
Okay, so my name is Aurelie McPherson, and I want to welcome everyone today to our webinar. I'm very proud to say that we have a name, and we are the business leaders impacting Saskatchewan sustainability. And our an acronym is BLISS, and who couldn't use a little bit of BLISS these days? It's organized by the RCE Saskatchewan, which is the Regional Center of Expertise on Education for Sustainable Development. So once again, a warm welcome to everyone. I want to start with two quotes this morning before we get into our four presentations that I'm very excited about and closing with some discussion time. The first quote is from, I love reading a magazine by the Association of Professional Engineers and Geoscientists of Saskatchewan called Professional Edge. And in their last issue, they interviewed Dr. Dave Thorson from Park at the U of R. And his first quote is, a recent Canadian report says that since 1983, 13 out of 20 of the most costly weather-related disasters in Canada happened on the prairies. So the scientists have always been telling us that the prairies are going to get hit hard. Now we have the insurance data that's backing that up. The second quote I want to share with you is from that article is BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager, will now require disclosure of climate-related risks and plans for operating under the goals of the Paris Accord to limit global warming to less than 2 degrees Celsius from the companies that are invested. So we're on this wave of change. So we really believe in the 17 goals of sustainable development. And that's why we're here today, is to share the roadmap that will ensure that your business is economically, environmentally, culturally, and socially sustainable. So we'll do some housekeeping before we get into our amazing four presentations. You'll find the chat box on the right of your screen. And we're using a platform from the U of S. And so I hope you're able to click on that button. And we ask that if you have questions or you're curious during the presentations, that you drop it into the chat box for us, and then we can get to those questions at the end of the presentations. We would also like you to turn off your video to save some bandwidth. And just so you know, this session will be recorded, and we hope to send it out to you afterwards. So we're going to start with a video. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and we're going to share a video with you.
We can be.
We must be
the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done.
The global goals.
A 15-year plan
For everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
Where no one wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die
from diseases we know how to cure.
And where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
where everyone
goes to school. And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive and be powerful
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is without.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets at home,
at school,
and at work.
We will live in a world
where there is sustainable energy
energy for everyone.
Heat, light, and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We'll live in a world where economies prosper.
A new wealth.
Lead to decent jobs for everyone.
And we will live in a world
Where our industry,
Our infrastructure and our
best innovations,
are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
we will live in a world
Where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated
inside our countries,
and between different countries.
where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
What we consume. Planet where we put back what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back a threat to climate change.
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
or restore and protect
Life on land,
The forests.
animals,
The earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
and answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries and we their people.
Work together.
Partnerships of all kinds.
These are the United Nations global goals.
For sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, I'm going to start sharing again. So we'd like to start with, I mean, before COVID, we all could have meet and greet and have side conversations, and COVID has kind of taken that away from us. But we really do want to get to know you and build a relationship with you because we want your business to be very successful. So we're going to test you and see if you can use the chat box, and we'd like you to put your name in and tell us about you know, the name of your company. So we'll just give you a minute or so to do that, and Aaron's going to share who we have on the webinar.
All right, so it looks like we've got Glenn here from Warden Gillis Law Firm. We've got Andrea Baker here with Mosaic Company. Got myself, I'm with the University of Saskatchewan. We've got Pierre-Andre with Johnson Controls, and James with P3 Architecture Partnership, Kaylee with 320 Modular, Olanik with the graduate student with the University of Saskatchewan, and Kurt Schroeder with Saskatchewan Polytechnic. It's fantastic, great turnout. Glad to see everyone here. Got Roger Petrie with Luther College.
And I think I saw James Yoke from
Oh, I missed one.
P3 Architecture.
Good, great.
Yeah.
Great,
okay,
thank you.
Great, thank you, everyone. So Roger's going to present for us for the next 10 minutes, and his presentation is going to be the summary of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And those, we refer to them as the SDGs. And so if not, but we hope that after this webinar, they'll roll off your tongues. The SDGs will become part of your verbiage. Dr. Roger Petrie is a professor of philosophy at the University Luther College at the University of Regina in the Department of Philosophy and Classics. He is a Rhodes Scholar. Roger has 10,000 hours in the art of debating. And if COVID has taught us anything, it's how important it is to ask the right question to create the conversation for healthy movement forward. So with that, Roger, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Orly. Let me share my screen here. Slideshow. All right, well, great to be with you all today. And I'm excited to be able to share a little bit more about sustainable development. I did want to say a bit about the organizations we're talking about today. So the Sustainable Development Goals, of course, on the left-hand side of my screen, it's coming from the United Nations. The RCE Saskatchewan is actually part of a global project of the United Nations universities. So that's an autonomous university body located in Tokyo, and we are part of 179 regional centers of expertise around the world. I teach at Luther College, as Aurelie mentioned, and Luther College is one of a number of partners of RCE Saskatchewan, and I'll talk a little bit about those partners later. So in terms of the overview for the presentation today, I'd like to say a bit more about what is sustainable development and where it's coming from, because the 17 goals, I think, articulate it well, but there is a sort of general definition we can look at. I'll then point you to those 17 goals, which were so wonderfully introduced in that video. And then I want to talk a bit about education for sustainable development and a little more about what RCE Saskatchewan is. And then to end talking about the importance of what we're doing today, which is really partnering in order to build back better. That's sort of a UN term, but building back after COVID and embracing the 17 goals to do that. So what is sustainable development? Well, the definition that's probably the most known goes back to 1987 when the World Commission on Environment and Development unleashed its report, Our Common Future. And that was headed up by Norway's Prime Minister back in the day, Gro Harlem Brundtland. But the idea was that we wanted to do development that met the needs of the present generation, all right? So particularly, especially people living in poverty, without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And this was a real hit, actually, in policy circles, this definition. People started working on it further in other areas. And so another definition said, well, wait a second, if we're going to meet the needs of future generations, we need to live within the carrying capacity of our ecosystems or of nature. So in a way, it's sort of living within the budget of what the planet is offering us. The other groups took hold of it. An Indigenous elder in Africa, after being explained to about this concept, he said, oh, well, so what you mean is enough for all forever. So the idea of sustaining resources so it's sufficient for our needs, but maybe, we also need to budget there too for everybody. And I imagine from an Indigenous perspective, that includes non-human species as well, and forever, so for the long term, all right? So in Indigenous communities, they often talk about 7 generations. The academics got a hold of this, of course, too, and I like this definition from Christine Vadovec at the University of Vermont. She says, sustainability is ecological flourishing plus human flourishing. Now, with a business audience today, I was trying to also think, well, how do we think about it from a business perspective? And in a way, it's talking about bottom lines, but for the very long term, all right? And bottom lines for everybody. So the key capitals, if we want to put it in that framework, is sustaining human capital and our communities, and for everybody. So that's building all of us up over the long term, and also sustaining our natural capital that sustains all of our production and consumption. And then the how-to, of course, is it's everybody. So all organizations have a role to play. So businesses, various types of businesses have a central role to play, but also NGOs, governments, service clubs, community groups, and so on. And the question is, and sustainable development doesn't judge this, is how do we do that? How do we achieve these goals in the most efficient and effective way over the long term? Because really, this is marking the success of our species in a way, and it's everybody's job. So sustainable development as a concept has evolved, and in 2015, the governments around the world embraced these 17 goals. These goals were actually generated by the world. The governments of the world only wanted 6 goals. But civil society,
they said stuff like
civil society and business organizations and other stakeholders said, no, we need these 17 goals. And the General Secretary of the United Nations said, we are going with the world, and so embraced these goals. They're holistic, so they're environmental, social, economic, meant to be embraced collectively. So when we do a project, we try and aim at as many of them as we can. They're measurable, so we have specific targets for each of these and indicators that are being measured globally and nationally, in our case by the Canadian government, cross-sectoral, and you can see that. The other thing that's important is they're scalable, so it doesn't matter whether you're working locally or globally or nationally, you can always employ these goals. While they're under the United Nations, it's up to each country to decide how it wants to pursue these, and each region. The UN doesn't dictate any of this. In fact, it's up to countries to sort of set out their own plans. All right, so it's not some world government conspiracy or anything like that. It's everybody working the way they best know how. Education for sustainable development is a key part of all this. So if we're talking about building up human capital, then we need to invest in it, and that is what we call education. It took me a long time to figure that out. That when we educate people, it's an investment in the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values needed for shaping a sustainable future. When we talk about ESD, though, what we mean by it is that it's transformative. It's not about theorizing about sustainable development, but it's about doing. The other thing about it is that it's inclusive. So it's not just formal education, but it's education people get in the media, social media, education they get especially through training, corporate education activities, and so on. So businesses have a huge role to play on educating for sustainable development. So what are RCEs? RCEs are regional strategies. So the United Nations University set up a program which enabled every region on the planet that wanted to the freedom to set up the educational strategies they needed to achieve the goals, and gave them the flexibility and the opportunity to do it. They are all mobilized voluntarily. The UN University does not put any money into any of these regions. And this global experiment has generated 179 regional centers of expertise. So we were doing partnerships for the goals going back to 2003, building that kind of social capital. So we're a regional learning space and a global learning space at the same time. RCE Saskatchewan, a key role for all RCEs is also to connect higher education, post-secondary organizations to local community practitioners, local businesses, local cities and towns and governments and so on. And so this is our RCE going back to 2007. We have the 3 largest higher education organizations in the province as part of it, as well as other organizations such as APEX. We bring people together through our annual recognition event. So this one in 2019 was at Candle Lake, hosted by Saskatchewan Polytechnic, and the last 2 have been virtual. So why do we need these RCEs? Well, because the future is uncertain, and risks are things we can manage. We know the probabilities, we know how to budget, we know how to invest. But when you're dealing with uncertainty, we don't know the probabilities. We're faced with surprises, and we need to be philosophical. That's why I have Socrates there, knowing what we don't know. And we seem every day to be being hit by something new, which we hadn't anticipated. And one of the best ways to deal with those surprises is, of course, to work together. All right, to work together so that whatever the future has in store, good or bad, we can adapt to it and we can respond to it. So it's not so much about controlling the future, but working with whatever the future has to offer and collaborating. And so my final slide here, I just want to talk a bit about the SDGs and business. They basically allow a platform for collaboration among firms, and that means locally, but it also means globally, right? The SDGs are that new global language that people in South America or Asia are speaking, and Saskatchewan needs to be a part of it. allows us to build new standards and advance education provincially and regionally. And of course, it allows us to connect with school systems, post-secondary education systems, but fundamentally they're a source of good questions. And if we want to innovate, we need to be asking the best questions and changing the culture of our organizations. And so on the right, you see a staircase at Luther College, my college, that we built the SDGs symbolically so that we learned every day, oh, these are the things we should be thinking about and sharing resources. The other thing about the RCE, I give you a few images at the bottom of that screen, connecting you globally. And so we have real opportunities through the global RCE network to connect to many, many systems and get you the information and knowledge that you might be looking for. So thank you so much. I'll stop sharing my screen and let this move on.
Thank you, Roger. I'm going to start sharing my screen. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to start with a question before we begin our second speaker. So we just want to know what brought you here today. So Erin, I'll let you read that out for us.
Sure. So if everyone wants to just take a moment and reflect on what was your interest or what were you hoping to learn about the SDGs today, and type up just a few words and put that in the chat. All right, so I see Glenn's interested in accelerating the transition to sustainability. So that's fantastic. Vasily is curious about the SDGs.
Good. Curiosity is good.
Give everyone just a couple more minutes to think about it. All right, so we've got, I think that was James, so looking to expand knowledge about a more holistic approach to sustainability. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that is really nice.
And Margaret, curious to see the extent of interest from business. And Pierre-Andre, curiosity about sustainable development ideas.
Great. Those are good. Those are great. That's a great place to start, is being curious. Okay, so I think we'll...
Got a couple more coming in just quickly. So Andrea, interested in learning more about RCE's role in connecting small business. Sorry, hang on, they're rolling in pretty fast here. Connecting businesses to their goals, and Kurt, orienting the curriculum to be more inclusive of sustainability concepts. And Olani, to gather information for a project on sustainability for small businesses. So lots of different ideas. This is great.
Great. That is good. Okay, we'll move on to our next presenter. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Roxanne Wagner. She's going to be presenting on the benefits of the goal for businesses. And I've had the absolute pleasure of working with Roxanne in a different life. And so when we connected at the RCE, it was really quite nice. Roxanne has her MBA in sustainable systems. She has over 20 years of experience working nationally and internationally with businesses, organizations, and communities in diverse cultural settings. Roxanne founded Sage Sustainable Solutions Consulting. She is co-chair of BLISS, so we chair this group together, and is committed to ensuring Saskatchewan businesses have the tools that they need to succeed so we can build back better. So I'm going to stop sharing, Roxanne, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Orly. And Erin, if you don't mind, if you can be the keeper of the slides. Thank you. And you can go straight into the second slide. Perfect. Wonderful. So yes, I wanted to share the business case and really what are the benefits of incorporating sustainability into your business or organization. And through this, I want to share with you many quotes, one being from Bob Willard. So we know that incorporating sustainability can help businesses reduce expenses. And Bob Willard, who I consider to be, he's a business sustainability thought leader. He's from Ontario and worked for IBM for about 30 years and has since now started, it's actually, I think it's more of a nonprofit. He has an open sourced website where he's a guest speaker and he provides a lot of tools to help organizations implementing sustainability and showing the benefits. And so according to him, even if a company doesn't really care about the environment, there are substantial savings to be derived by using less energy, water, and materials in the manufacturing process. And these are the low-hanging fruit of eco-efficiency associated with sustainability programs. According to Ernst & Young, they estimate that cutting costs by 1% is roughly equivalent to increasing sales by 10% with respect to bottom line effects. And we know that you have to work much harder on your top line to bring it down to the bottom. So that's very impactful. Sustainability can increase your employee productivity. And a Gallup poll found that enterprises in the same industry with a highly engaged workforce achieved 18% greater productivity, 12% higher profitability, and 2.6 times the earnings per share growth rate. And according to a Monster Track poll, they found that 92% of young professionals would be more inclined to work for a company that is environmentally friendly. For reducing hiring and attrition expenses, well, sustainable companies are more competitive at attracting and retaining top talent. And as we saw from monstertrack.com as well. Hiring top talent is one challenge, but keeping them is another. And of employees in G7 countries, 83% say their company's positive corporate responsibility reputation increases their loyalty. Estimates of the total cost of employee turnover range from 30% of the yearly salary of the vacated position for hourly employees to as much as 150%. And two other benefits are the reduced risks. So sustainability strategies reduce a range of strategic, operational, compliance, and financial risks. And the water crisis, failure of climate change adaptation, and extreme weather events are among the 8 most likely risks with the highest impacts. And overall, as we reduce expenses, increase your employee productivity, reduce your hiring and attrition expenses, and reduce our risk, that increases your profitability. And so, Erin, if you can move on to the next slide. For a business, looking at whether or not sustainability initiatives will fail or succeed, this was a study, or a survey, I should say, that was done in 2017. And it was Bain & Company. And it was a survey for 300 large companies who are engaged in sustainability. And the reason that companies, when this survey went out, the reasons that the companies failed at sustainability initiatives were because of a lack of investment of resources by the company focused on sustainability. The company had competing priorities. There were culture change challenges, obstacles within the organization, and the lack of a compelling case for change. And I really like that one, although it's only 6%. If you don't have buy-in from your leadership, that can be a very serious roadblock. And I want to talk about that in a bit of how to meet them where they're at. But the reasons that these companies where sustainability initiatives succeeded was that senior leadership support was number one. And I don't know how many within this group here are leaders, but that is one of the most important things for success. And with that, then employee engagement and interest, that will fall in line if a senior leadership is on board. Clear goals and metrics, effective internal communication, and the introduction of policies and processes related to the environment. Next slide, Erin. And so I don't know if you can relate to this picture, but this is about a leader, a senior leader, and has so much on their plate. You can see with business, we're talking about profits, we're talking about share prices, they're concerned about the marketing of their product or their service, productivity, keeping employees, what about their supply chain? So they have so much on their plate. And then we throw the word at them, sustainability. And sustainability can be complex, or we can make it complex. And it doesn't have to be that way. Really, sustainability, as Roger described, it's about the long term, and it really should be incorporated in the day-to-day. And what I share, and this is where we talk about, how do we meet the leader of an organization where they're at? If they're feeling really frustrated, why don't we talk that they understand? So we may not even be bringing up the word sustainability. We know that the low-hanging fruit will have some financial benefits. So why don't we talk in a language that they can relate to, and that they will not only relate to, but they will see the benefit for their business. So talk in numbers. And if you can go to the next slide, Erin. And Erin, I don't know if you can go to share the slides where it just sees the slides. Then it's a little bit bigger. And so on the slide of meeting them where they're at, the graphs with the numbers, talking to a business with numbers. And so if this is something that you don't feel comfortable doing, if you're not a numbers person, find someone within your organization that you can sit down with and look at these initiatives and put a dollar figure to if you're going to be sharing this with your leadership team. Erin, if you can't get it to work, that's fine, not to worry. So with any initiative, being able to put into the numbers, this is from Bob Willard's work, showing the numbers of the revenue, the benefits of the numbers, looking at the expenses, and then looking at through, by engaging your employees, what are those savings? And finally, turning it into profit and showing them in those numbers. And with that, you'll have a much better effect of moving that conversation forward. And again, you may not be using the word sustainability, but you'll be doing it. The next slide, which is the total impact measurement. There we go. Now, this slide is quite busy and complex, and to do the work would probably take quite a bit of financial support. But the point of showing this slide, I love this graph or this picture infographic, because it tells a story. This is a framework that PricewaterhouseCoopers uses, and this example that they're using, so they work with a lot of business, and they're presenting here a scenario. And so you can see the scenario that they're presenting is an organization. This is a made up example, but it's a brewery. And they're wondering, for this brewery, should they import their barley, or should they grow and source their barley locally? And so they used the sustainability lens, and they're looking, you can see around that circle, it looks at the social impacts, the environmental impacts, the tax impacts, and from all of the impacts, the economic impacts, and all of these, by the way, are measured in financial dollars. The green shows a positive financial. And so you can see when they import barley, and also when you grow and source locally, the profits are about the same. But when you look at the environmental impacts comparing importing and growing locally, well, you're spending a lot more money. You can see in red there, it's a cost on greenhouse gas emissions. Yet growing it and sourcing locally, there's less because there's no shipping costs. But water use is very high if they grow it locally. And so I think that's something that, again, this is a scenario that PricewaterhouseCoopers does. It's copyrighted, so it's all their internal data. But the reason I'm sharing it with you is try and find a model that can tell a story and allows you to compare and help you as an organization make decisions of what's most important for you. So if water is scarce, growing it and sourcing it locally may not be the best option, but you have to weigh that off because it may impact the livelihoods in your area. And so again, that is a complex model, but I do love that it tells a visual story. And so just think about, as you're talking about sustainability within your organization, how are you communicating it and getting that message and buy-in? And I have one final slide. And that is getting back to the SDGs. In steps to maximize your contribution to the SDGs, there's 5 steps, and this is from the SDG Compass. It's first of all, understanding the SDGs that Roger presented on. Within those, defining what is your organization's priorities. From there, setting your goals, and then integrating, which can be the most time-consuming step, and then finally getting to the step of reporting and communicating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. That was great. Now I'm going to share my slides again. Okay, so before we go on to the next presentation, the question is, had you heard about the SDGs before today? So it's a simple yes or no question. Oh.
So far we have 2 yeses. Got 3. So it sounds like SDGs are somewhat familiar to everyone so far. Yeah, got a yes in mention, but not necessarily in detail. So it's good. Opportunity to learn some more.
That is good. Good. Okay, so next we are going to present the Blanket of Warmth video, and this is about 6 minutes long. And it's an example of how you can weave the SDGs into your project. So Murdo and I were approached by Star Blanket Cree Nation to look at poor indoor air quality in their homes, and about 60% of their homes have poor quality. So when we approached this project, we wove as many of the SDGs we could into the project. So I'll let Aaron, I'm going to stop sharing. How do we, whoops. Oh, there we go. And I'll let you play the video, Aaron. I think there's a bit of a commercial that we have to sit through. Oh no, there we go. Good job.
Blanket of warmth. That's where we get our good feeling, when we're cold, and good feelings when we have a negative energy sometimes, and it lifts us and it brings us warmth and it brings us energy to do more things in life.
It actually started here on Treaty 4 ground, and I had the pleasure of working with Wendell Star Blanket on some volunteer work I was doing.
I told her about a dream and a vision I had for First Nations people, and that's to help them address the water issue, water treatment plants, mold, those types of things. And she says, well, we have, interesting that you should talk about that, because we've developed this system.
We figured out an easy way to use your house furnace and distribute the heat better. So rather than blowing the heat out with warm air, which results in rising heat in cold basements, we basically take a certain amount of that heat, turn it into hot water, and circulate it through radiant piping applied to the basement walls.
So we thought, well, we can't do this by ourselves. Let's bring in the best and the brightest that we know.
One of Upanor's main core values is to create better human environments. Upanor is a pipe manufacturer, so we manufacture PEX tubing for radiant heating, plumbing, and residential fire sprinkler systems. And so we first got involved in this when Aura Lee had contacted me with Wendell and Sonia's situation with the mold in their home. So both of our joint products come together to create the solution and solve the problem. Essentially, we take the existing furnace, and McPherson Engineering has come up with a product called Radiant Link, which essentially is a coil that heats up the water going through the pipes as the furnace is running. So once the water is running through the pipes over to the pump keeps the water circulating and reheating through the coil. It only has just a very thin insulation, and so that allows the conduction of the heat from the pipe to go to the cement and create a thermal mass. So basically what that means is you're using the whole cement wall behind the heat to create the heat.
The data shows that this home was very, very sick.
As you can see behind me, this board, I built myself along with my Aboriginal employees. This offers us an opportunity to provide employment to First Nations people in the sector and also bring wealth to the community. We've taken this project on because it gives us an opportunity to bring First Nations housing up to a healthy medium for our people.
I teach a course called Capstone Project. So this is the final year project for all engineering students. There are two parts in the project. One is to compare the house where the system was already installed to a new house that didn't have the system, and compare, the temperature variation, humidity levels, and so on, energy consumption and electricity consumption, and so on. Second part was to help, design and install the new system in the new house. And they were very proud. I think they were very emotional even to talk about it when they started presenting their results.
The 17 goals of sustainable development, number 12 is my favorite, and that's about responsible consumption and production. And that's what this project was all about. It's like, we are not going to throw all these houses in the garbage. We are going to look for the assets and make them better, and that's what we did.
It's improved our living conditions, our breathing conditions, our allergies, our asthma, they've all disappeared. So it's been a complete turnaround in our health.
It starts at home, self-worth, self-value, Lots of our structures for our families, they're subpar in that. And that has a lingering effect on our attitudes in that, because we come from a place where things aren't even up to date as they are off reserve. And this gives us an opportunity to bring not only our home fires up to a healthy standard, and that, and then we know we deserve better, not only ourselves, but as a people.
The more homes we get it in, the more homes we're going to save, the more lives that we're going to improve.
It's all about healing our people and making sure that they have a good life, that they live a good life. And I believe this project is so important that this project will do that.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. I'll share my screen again. So I just want to share that we absolutely could not have achieved what we did in the blanket of warmth had we not embraced the 17 goals. And so sometimes your volunteer work spills into your professional job, and we're really grateful at McPherson Engineering that happened. I'm going to introduce Trevor now. Trevor is the reason we're here today. He asked the good question. Are Saskatchewan businesses building adaptation into their business plan? And that was a really good question. And so I'm going to turn it over to Trevor, and he's going to share his thoughts.
Thank you. Good morning. My background is 28 years working at SaskTel in IT, doing major project development. And in that scope, we tended to try to think about the biggest picture possible. So for different organizations, depending on your size and what sector you're in, you have different ways of getting things done, different needs for how you get things done. Some situations you have business cases, and sometimes it's a lot less formal than that. There's lots of different ways of doing things. And what I was able to see over the years was that RCE was doing great work, and I was also seeing that business was doing a lot of great things, but individual companies were going out and creating great things and using it themselves. And then another company would go out and create something great as well. And I just thought, there's probably a lot of reuse out there that could be happening. So my question to this group was basically to try and enable some of the great things that are out there that would save business effort in order to enable you to get things done in a much more efficient way. So as Orly said, it starts with a good question at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trevor. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, now we get to have discussions and questions, and I'm really happy to share. Erin is going to lead us in that, and Erin is the Sustainable Education Initiative Coordinator for the U of S. And you'll be really impressed with Erin, with her insightfulness and her sound knowledge of the SDGs. So I'm going to let you take it away. And we're kind of running out of time here, so we might have to compress that a little bit.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for the warm welcome. So I think what we, as Orly may have mentioned at the start of this presentation, we're a relatively new group. This business leading sustainability in Saskatchewan group, and so what we're trying to do. So I think as a group, we're really looking to sort of inspire action, support collaboration, and help connect people with the resources around sustainability. So much like Trevor indicated, that there's lots of great people doing great things, and it's about connecting people with the information, the resources, and sharing success stories to help us all advance together. So really what this group, I think, looking forward is wanting to understand a little bit better is how can we support businesses who have that interest, who have that desire to think about the Sustainable Development Goals and adopt them, and what can we provide to help those connections, to help that information sharing. So in terms of, I guess, some questions, we are a little bit short on time, but generally, I think we'll start out with sort of just a quick little question about what topics around sustainability are of most interest to the folks here on the call. And are there any particular SDGs that jump out that when you're thinking about sustainability within your business or your organization, are you zeroing in on a couple of the SDGs? Are you thinking about water or waste or equality issues? Which ones are of most interest to you? So we are a little bit short on time, so we'll maybe continue to use the chat function. So if you want to, then we can kind of get responses from as many people as possible. So if you want to give a couple minutes to think about that and type in your responses in the chat function. So what topics of sustainability or which of the SDGs are of most interest to you and your organization? All right, so we see from Margaret here. So engaging leadership, so especially in large organizations, and that's fantastic. That's a great place to start. I think Roxanne mentioned the challenges around engaging leadership. We see reducing ecological footprint from Kurt. So yeah, thinking about the impact of our businesses. Glenn, we've got equality, protection of human rights, and leading by example. Perfect. That connects to a lot of the SDGs around equality and no poverty. Fantastic. Yeah. leading by example. I think that's a great idea. Businesses have the opportunity to lead by example in the way they run their own operations. Let's give just a couple more minutes. Facility climate action, yes. So yeah, a strong need for businesses to drive leadership in the area of taking action on climate and mitigating greenhouse gas reductions. Responsible consumption and production, that's definitely a big one, depending on the area of business. But if you're working with a lot of materials, thinking about where those materials are sourced, what the life cycle of those materials are, and what the end use of those, when they reach end of life, where are they going to end up, whether it's a landfill or can they be reused, recycled? Can we talk about circular economies? Fantastic. Perfect. Okay, we've got a few more. So shifting from a mindset of perpetual growth to one of efficiency, that's a great concept. And then, yeah, many of these topics are embedded in architectural design, but expanding the thought process and opportunity, and then including younger and upcoming leaders and following by example, demonstrated by Aurelie and McPherson. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we'll move on to a second question here and see what do you think are some of the primary challenges for you and your organization in getting started? So we could all be in different places. So maybe you've already been doing work in sustainability, embedding that throughout, or maybe you're just starting out and this is kind of the first time you're thinking about either sustainability or the SDGs. What are some of the primary challenges, or what do you think are the obstacles for you and your organization in taking more action and meeting some of those goals that you've already outlined? I'll give you here just a couple minutes to enter in your ideas. So a couple of the topics that have maybe been mentioned throughout. So, it could be the topic of sustainability. Is it overwhelming? Is there this perception that there's a cost in adopting sustainability? Is there a need to rationalize cost savings within that? Do you have challenges bringing your leadership on board and articulating a vision? Or perhaps it's about being able to communicate effectively within your organization about sustainability. So I see everyone's thinking hard. I'll give you just a few more minutes and you can think about what a challenge is for you and your organization. Oh, hang on. They were coming in and mine stopped scrolling. Sorry, I didn't see those answers coming in. Okay. Okay. So one is understanding how we can incorporate the social side of sustainability and economic sustainability within a larger complex industry. That's a really good point. Yeah. So our industries and our ecosystems of industry are very complex, and integrating it throughout the system is certainly a challenging cultural norms. Absolutely. How do we change the status quo? Certainly, definitely lots of need to challenge what we're looking at and how we're doing things normally. Yeah, getting beyond self-interest. And we've got addressing resistance, fear of change. Definitely, that's certainly a big one. And getting leadership on board. So getting out of the weeds, the day-to-day deadlines, and thinking strategically and more holistically. Yes, that's absolutely fantastic. It's a big vision, it's a big idea, and how do we get past what we're doing on our day-to-day and move towards that big vision? Absolutely. And then leading leadership from our own leaders within our government and other actors around the province. That's fantastic. Perfect. All right. So I see we're here with just a couple minutes left. So I just want to thank everyone for your input and your ideas, and I'll pass it back over to Aurelie for just a little bit of a wrap up and maybe talk about where we're headed next.
Okay, thanks so much, Erin. That was great. That was some good input. I'm going to share my screen again. So I just want to share with everybody, Team BLISS is made up of volunteers and they're amazing people. And I mean, we started this 2 months ago, and as I mentioned, I can't even believe we have a name. But people like Roxanne, Roger, Margaret, Trevor, Aaron, Kurt, Courtney have just all been incredible. But we're always inclusive. If you want to jump in and be part of this, we would love to have you. So next steps, what we plan to do is we'd like to host another webinar in September. So, Aaron, do you have everybody's email, or do they need to send you an email so we can send them out that package of information?
I think I have most, but if you didn't receive an invite directly from me, if you want to be on that list, just pop me an email and I'll enter my email in the chat so you have it. It's just aaron.akins@usask.ca. So if you're wanting to be included on any emails and you haven't already got an invite directly from me, then just pop me an email and I will include you for future updates.
That would be great. So what we want to do is we're going to email you a package of information just with some links, some videos, just to keep, moving forward. And what we're doing here is kind of different. Most times business is very competitive. And what we're doing here is we realize that for our businesses in Saskatchewan to succeed, all businesses need to succeed. And so we're blown away. We were hoping to have 1 or 2 businesses on this meeting, but I think we had 11, which is incredible. But what we'd like you to do is invite your competition, invite your other members of your industry, because we'd like to grow this, because we want to make sure we're in this for Saskatchewan, and we really believe that I don't think this is happening anywhere else in the country. And we're here to make sure that you succeed. And so with that, we're going to close. And we hope that the next meeting that we'll have maybe 22 people on. And anyways, thank you so much for sharing your time, guys. And we did some good work this morning. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Holy cow, you guys, we did it.